The only thing that really upsets me about the whole Michael factor is to talk about drugs, sex, like no one else has ever had drugs or sex, like no one's ever else has made a freaking mistake in their life. But, you know, what no one talks about is he was one of the greatest singers in the world.
He really did have a charisma and a wonderful sort of attitude on stage, and great performer. I mean, it used to excite me every time I saw him, and I thought, wow, just, you know, this guy really has got something.
You've never met anybody that was just so obviously going to be like massive. It was quite incredible. Although it was an unstoppable train, if he was aware of it, you would never guess it from speaking to him.
Michael as a performer was on a par with every great rock performer that's walked the stages of the world.
I always rated him so highly as sort of one of the best, so he was your full-on pop star.
Michael was just like a complete one-off. I mean, he was very, very special. If you can't make it with him in the band, you know.
After a career that spanned over 3 decades, selling over 30 million records, on November 22nd, 1997, for Michael Hutchence, it all suddenly went tragically wrong.
The body of an Australian citizen who has been a resident in England for some time was discovered in the hotel on the 5th floor.
To the outside world, Michael Hutchence had everything: money, fame, and all the trappings of international success. But overnight his status changed, from rock star to tabloid celebrity, with intrusive media scrutiny of his private life driving him to despair.
There was a little bit of a vibe underground about this little band that was happening, and obviously very early on in their career.
Things were tough when they started up, you know. I mean, they never had any money, and they were doing something for peanuts. I was the official photographer, actually. I think when Chris Murphy got hold of them, I could see that he was very serious, and this guy was determined to make INXS an international band.
And I'd never met them, didn't know anything about them. The next minute this skinny, pimply kid came on and I went, oh. And I said, I'll take him.
Chris saw the big picture and wasn't afraid to share his vision, you know, with the band and tell them how he thought it should be.
I had no fear about, you know, making a band the biggest band in Australia. And I said, on the basis that it's an international project, not Australian, I'll do it. I was pretty lucky. I had 6 great musicians, and I had a singer that didn't go get it. Mate, there you go.
Hi there, Australia. This is Michael Hutchence of INXS, and I'd like to wish Countdown a very happy 10th anniversary. Keep it up. Cheers.
He lived in Hong Kong and spoke beautifully, so I could put him into interviews, and they'd go, oh, you know, and think he was English, and they thought he was English.
It was a great experience settling in Hong Kong. I mean, they lived a very sophisticated life, and I think it broadened their minds a lot.
So this is what's left of a place where I used to live. As in, you know, in Hong Kong, everything changes so quickly. And this place, last time I saw it a few years ago, nobody was living in it, so I guess this was going to happen to it.
In Hong Kong, he was always stringing words together. Yeah, he was very good at it too, and I think that's what, you know, sort of moved him into writing lyrics.
When I came back here to live again, it was fantastic because I've never liked places where rock and roll kind of is to live in. Like, I always liked that, being away from the madness of what being in music means, because no one knows really, no one really cares, and you're very anonymous on the street.
In 1975, Kel and his wife Patricia parted. She announced she was to move to Hollywood to pursue her career. It was decided that Michael would go with her.
She took Michael to Hollywood because she was hoping to pursue a further makeup career, and put him into North Hollywood High, I think. Well, I suppose it was a great experience for Mike, but I just couldn't see them going anywhere, or him going anywhere, under the circumstances of them being in the USA, and I got him back. I think he got quite a shock when he went to school in Sydney. You know, they grew up speaking English, you know, pretty well, with a bit of an English accent, so I think the kids at school thought they were a little bit stuck up, maybe.
He came into the class about a third of the way into the year. He'd just come back from America with his mother. He had a very stylish haircut when all of the other boys were very scruffy. He did seem different to the other boys of his age, and I don't know about cosmopolitan, but as I said, he seemed a little bit more mature, and I suppose it means more worldly than they were. John and Andrew seemed very much your middle-class suburban teenagers at that time, or to me anyway, that's how they came across.
They got tagged a lot, and I think that ended up in a bit of a fight once at one of the schools. Andrew coming to Michael's rescue, the story goes. None of us knew he could sing, to be quite honest with you, and when they were rehearsing in my garage in Belrose, they threw the microphone and said, "Why don't you have us sing, sing something?" Which he did, and I think that's how it all started.
A long time back, when they came on Countdown, I can't exactly remember the year, but they were very, very young. I remember them coming on, very impressive. I'd seen them live only a couple of days before. They reminded me, or certainly Michael did, of a very young Mick Jagger. And when I put it to him, he more or less says, "Well, who's Mick Jagger?" And I felt very, very strange answering that. And he was a bit cheeky. You're recording a new album?
We've just finished an album about a week ago.
Right.
So, and
the change of record producers?
Yeah, a new record producer,
right.
Different studio. And we're really happy with it, really like the song.
Right. But they were impressive back then, and you sort of had that feeling that they were going to do something, that they really were going to be a group to break away from that Australian mould of being a pub rock group in this country.
106 KKDJ Fresno is the station. In the studio with me at this very minute, a couple guys from INXS, Mike and Tim. Okay, what do you say we play a song from the LP, Shaboo Shabba, which is your fourth?
One of the first things that I did, based on the fact that this band has to be an international band, as I said, the two songwriters, and it was pretty clearly that stage Michael and Andrew were developing as the major songwriters. I sent them to London, put them in a house, and that was to get them stopped listening to the radio stations in Sydney.
Well, they're extremely willing, to throw all their clothing out when they get hot, put it that way.
Chris Murphy knew that if INXS were going to make any impression internationally, they desperately needed that radio-friendly single. They turned to producer Mark Opitz.
Chris rang me and said, "Listen, I want you to do a single with the band. We think that you can take them to where they need to go at radio." And so he sent me 3 songs over. All 3 were great songs, but the one that probably suited radio the most at that particular time was a song called The One Thing.
You could feel this English new wave invasion with, the ABCs and U2s and Polices and blah, blah, blah. So I could sense that coming in an acceptable form for the Americans. And I said, "We're going to America in the next 6 months," or whatever it was at this stage. I said, "Out of your mind, what are you doing?" The band was just, "You're crazy." I said, "No, we've got to go, and we've got to go now." And quite honestly, in retrospect, we judged it to the day.
First time I actually ever saw INXS, they were supporting Adamant, and saw them there. Just sort of vaguely remembered, the vocalists sort of like leaping around all over the place. About a year later, I was in Australia. I met Michael, and then actually a message came through from the office that Michael wanted me to produce his band.
I still remember Michael ringing me in the office and saying, "This guy did Sex Pistols, Roxy Music, blah, blah, blah," and it was fantastic. So that's where it started. It was Michael's idea.
Andrew said to me, Chris Thomas made the decision that really changed their career in one sentence, and that was, "We're short one song."
He was convinced that this time was the single, and I was convinced that it wasn't a hit single.
I got a phone call, said, "We're missing a song." And I was like, "Huh? No, I've got release schedules and I've got a tour booked. I'm not interested in this." I said, "You got your job, band had the job, time up. Come on, just give me the album, let's go."
And then Andrew said, "Well, let me just work on this one song I've got, let me just present it to you, let me just do it the way I think we should do it."
Chris Ring said, "Come down, listen to this," and hit a button, and it was What You Need.
We used to start at midday. There was one person who was always there on time. Michael was there, absolutely. He was there on the dot every single day, absolutely focused. This is what we're doing, this is what I'm doing. They seemed to sort of be you know, they had this sort of swagger and a bit of arrogance in a little way of being like, you know, they knew that they were like the #1 band in Australia. So I was sort of a bit sort of surprised at that in some ways, but it was interesting because that sort of changed on the next album. The major difference between Listen Like Thieves and Kick was the fact that on Kick, Andrew and Michael wrote all the songs.
Their songwriting was getting a lot more heavily weighted towards Michael and Andrew.
Andrew played me a couple of finished demos, and he played me the riff on a tape of this riff. Ding, 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 ding.
No show at Radio City is sold out quicker than INXS. Not Sinatra, not Prince, not anybody. These guys have the all-time record.
We don't have tickets. We're looking for tickets.
Record company reps from the US and Canada are here to acknowledge the sale of 5 million records in North America over the last 5 years. Retail sales valued at around $50 million.
Do you know that album got rejected by every record company in the world? Every record company rejected that album. I actually had 3 presidents of 3 companies say, abused me. One didn't, Doug Morris didn't abuse me, he just said, I can't, I'm having trouble hearing this, Chris.
In potential for success, I think that they're going to be one of the great ones. I think that 10 years from now, when they're all in their mid-30s, they'll still be touring around the country. They'll be like The Who or the Rolling Stones or one of the greats. I believe that's their destiny.
INXS reached a turning point in their career. If they were to have any real chance of international success, they needed the big album. But not everyone was convinced that Kick had what it took.
The president of Polygram actually rang me and said, "What the hell is Andrew and Michael doing?" So, beg your pardon? What the hell is Andrew and Michael think they're doing? And he said, "There is no hit singles off this album. This is one of the worst albums I've ever heard in my life." And he went, "I'll give you $1 million to go and re-record this album." I was like, oh. And after that, I went to war. It was me against every single body. If we would have failed, I would have been in jail because I spent everything. It's pretty scary, and I never told the band. To this day, I don't think they ever knew that.
Right at the end of the week when it was all finished, we took a cassette down to this little club called Benny's, where everybody, we always used to go on Friday nights to get off our faces, because that's where everybody else was off their faces. And even though they were all off their faces, we put this cassette on and just saw everybody just got up and we just went, you knew.
Their latest album, Kick, has sold over 3 million copies in America alone. It has produced a #1 and #2 single on the American charts. And a 3rd single is just about to enter the US top 10.
Michael was very, very important to the Kick album. He had, it's almost as though he had a sense out here somewhere where it was going to go. He definitely had a sort of vision for it, even like with the cover or whatever.
I don't think we quite expected the success we had in some ways, even though we wanted to make a pop record. We really did, you know. But it's not till it's over that it hits you about 6 months after. Oh, that happened.
Yeah, that's true. Mm.
You go, woof. Also, everything's different now.
I don't think we were ever sort of hell-bent on perpetuating that sort of, you know, let's conquer the world sort of syndrome.
Yeah, we were. Come on, mate. The program, buddy.
The war cry was killing root.
To me, he didn't change very much. This was the incredible thing. It was almost as though he was geared for it in the first place. It was almost as though he'd already lived through it. And here was this sort of thing already sort of like pre-built or pre-packaged and sort of and done. So that then when he became sort of like a big star, he didn't act like a big star. He was just the same. He was still, you know, Michael. He'd still sort of like chat to the bloody bus driver or whoever else. And that was what was fantastic. You know, that's what was so endearing about it.
Right, and the winner is, I'm sure this is going to be popular, Michael Hutchence.
I'd like to say thank you to John, Tim, Kirk, Andrew and Gary. And most of all, thank you to all of you. This is really great.
I think contrary to appearances, I mean, he was kind of the consummate rock star in a way, but he was totally approachable and very, very kind of down to earth.
And the limos pulled up to take Mark and the rest of the guys to the venue. But Mark said, well, you got a truck? Like, I'll come with you in the truck. And he pulled up in the old truck, you know.
He didn't have this kind of huge front. He was quite a gentle character and it's extremely likeable character.
He was a bohemian kind of person. And to me, he fluctuated between being quite shy and quite retiring and needing his little circle of friends around him, to being an absolutely flamboyant, outrageously talented, big-time rock performer. And I don't quite know how those two things joined together in the one person, but he was a dichotomy within himself. And that's what made him really fascinating.
We get letters. Rich Appel of CBS TV in New York notes that INXS is the first non-American group to land 6 consecutive top 10 hits in the Hot 100 since Culture Club in 1983-84.
Wow.
But as INXS's fame grew, the constant media focus on Michael was causing uneasiness within the band.
To suddenly become a huge sort of star, it's obviously going to have some effect on you.
People start demanding a lot, but then they start demanding more than just your time. They start demanding a certain you. We want you for this.
It was getting that danger zone, you know, where it was Michael, you know, Jim Morrison, all this sort of stuff was going around. It was getting to the danger zone. You knew it was coming. And when the Rolling Stones said we wanted you on the cover, it was really difficult because anyone else would have just conceded.
It's a big thing traditionally to do the cover of Rolling Stone. They didn't want the band, they wanted me. So I said, we're not doing Rolling Stone anymore. We're just going to have the band or nothing. So you have to start making some hard line decisions.
No Michael, no cover. I say no band, no photo. It's a stalemate. And I said, guys, I'm here. Let's talk about it. And Michael said, I agree. I'd like to know how many people yesterday and today would do that.
You know, people just don't go out and buy rock and roll just for music. No one just bought Elvis because of just the songs. I mean, he's a brilliant singer and great songs and stuff, but, you know, it's the whole thing.
Michael was always into sort of like what was coming out from all over the place. The fact that like he was going to raves and you know all those sort of warehouse things. I mean, he'd always bring that sort of stuff. You know, bring hip hop records in and you know and introduce stuff and see what could be done with it.
He travelled the world. He went to clubs. He was out late at night. He worked the coalface of youth culture. He was there. You know, he was on the street of youth culture. I remember Andrew Farris telling me that he was sitting home watching MTV one night and up comes this video of Max Q, and he had never heard of Max Q. And all of a sudden he's watching this thing on TV, it's Michael singing, but the band's not him and his brothers.
The band was at the height of their success. They were taking a year off, and suddenly Michael's recording with this, you know, very underground musician from Melbourne called Ollie Olsen.
I think when he did Max Q, it was a combination of both, like frustration and wanting to expand his horizons. You know, he just wanted to do different things.
I don't think it really interfered that much with INXS. He just had a great desire to get that music out.
Quite frankly, I said, Michael, don't do it. If it blows at your credibility, we're down the drain, and you'll take INXS with it. So the compromise was it had to be a band name. That's the only reason I would support the project. I'd spoken to the band, I'd sat them down and said, look, there's two ways we can go, boys. Michael's just going to do it. And if we're going to do it, we're going to do it so you get credibility out of it. So we could do it. And I said, Michael, I'll work the album, although it's supposed to be my time off, because, you know, you go on the road for 18 months, you're away from your family. I'll work the album.
I remember when it came out in the UK, I was actually living there, and Paul Oakenfold did a remix of the song Sometimes, and he just went, look, mate, this is gonna go top 5, I tell you. And at the time, Paul saying that was fairly accurate. I mean, he had a lot of hits at that time, and was very onto it. And but no one knew what it was. It was definitely, yeah, I definitely squashed, and without going into details, which I could, but it'd probably get me into trouble.
Whoever said that, it'll get some awful disease and, you know, get awful karmatic problems. Seriously, whoever said that. And they should be straightened out big time, because that's crap. We're not that sort of people. INXS, there's no one in INXS who ever came from us.
I think he felt, yeah, just generally embarrassed that he hadn't sort of stood up to certain powers that be. But that's okay.
Until the end of 1989, Michael's love life had generally taken place behind closed doors. But with INXS in recess and Michael working on Max Q, his mind turned towards a serious relationship once more. And Michael had a very specific partner in mind.
I remember we were in a hotel in New York, this amazing hotel. It was just unbelievable. And we had dinner, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've got this thing about Kylie Minogue." You know? And he said, and he was currently like a single man, you know, for 5 seconds or whatever. And I said to him, "What?" He said, "Oh, maybe I should call." I said, "Hey, call her, you know, go ahead, do it, you know." And I don't think Kylie even knows that, do you, Kylie? It's all my fault.
Oh, we have a good time. We have a sense of humour, thank God.
I was driving my car coming up the Sydney Harbour Bridge, I think, at one time, and I got this phone call saying, "Do you know Michael's going out with Kylie Minogue?" And say,
oh, they're great together. You know, we met Kylie a couple of times in Hong Kong out at Michael's townhouse and a dinner where we'd go out. Yeah, no, they were lovely together. We always loved Kylie. She was a great little talent.
instantly the damage control thing goes in my head, you know, because Kylie at that stage has got curly, frizzy thing. It had just come out of her frizzy hair thing. She's on Neighbours. And I thought, oh, what's Michael going to do? Just go, wow, one hit. You know, all because of his old fella.
He just was incredibly charismatic, very intelligent, generous, funny, fabulous storyteller. I mean, he just was larger than life, but humble with it. And I met him at a point in my life where I was just ready to look at the world, and it was like he took my blinkers off.
Thank God she turned out to be really cool. Thanks, Kylie.
We've been married and divorced 3 times.
Are you still in love with Kylie?
God, Jeff. Don't ask me questions. No, it's too private, you know. At the very least, we're very good friends, you know, always will be.
You know, this band was just going through the roof. They had bloody drug dealers, they had all sorts of shit hanging around them, like really nasty people, all the things that scared me about being in the rock and roll business.
X was weird. X was definitely weird. Very, very early on in the sessions, Andrew came in and sort of wanted to have a sort of band meeting, which basically he was really having to go at Michael and sort of saying that he wasn't taking it seriously, and Michael always took it seriously.
Well, what if we repackaged the 2 singles and we could go out with a double-sided, the double #1 in America or something? A lot of people used to do things around the band that were quite dumb, and that's probably why, if anything, I didn't do all the socialising with Michael and would spend my time with the other guys in the band and whatever else and stuff. And people used to, without conscious of what they were doing, the other guys in the band just pick me up and go, "Oh, let's go to dinner," or "Let's go out here," and whatever else. And that hurts people, you know, and you've got to be conscious of that. Then you go back to the studio the next day and go, "Hi, Andrew, how you going?" I go, "Yeah, I'm great. Have a good night out." "Oh, yeah, we went and saw this great, we went to this beautiful restaurant and Michael picked us great wine and, it's fantastic." I mean, people blind.
I'd heard Disappear as a sort of demo. And Michael was going do. I thought, yep, that's it. And he was singing do because he hadn't written any words, and it was like, don't bother. I was convinced that was like, you know, that was like going to be a hit. I think the problem with X was, you know, this fact that like everybody was getting a bit burnt out. They were getting a bit burnt out, as simple as that. They didn't have the depth of material that I mentioned that they had on Kick. I think on X, it was much more, there's a bass player there, there's a drummer there, and there's there, you know what I mean? It was less band. It was less band-like, and there was bickering. They were bickering between themselves.
I'd lay down the law so hard with the band about drugs, right? So When I walked in any room, it was like, you know, in you turn the lights on, the cockroaches go running, you know? It was like that. And it doesn't matter, backstage, recording studios, when people knew I was coming in, it was like, you know, it was scary. Absolutely scary, because you just saw, you know, drug dealers coming from Chicago and turning up and say, who are these guys? I'd be saying, who are these guys in the dressing room? They go, it's Tommy and Danny, and, you know, they go, look, if they hear what I think they are, get out.
I mean, now Michael was still there at 12 o'clock, but it was simply because he'd sort of got in about 8 o'clock in the morning and gone to sleep on the couch, and he was still there. So it all changed a little bit, you know. And I mean, obviously things had gone on the road, you know, and Michael admitted himself that he'd sort of like, you know, got a bit lost, you know.
We all have our wilderness years, whether it's drugs, alcohol, lack of fame, whatever.
And he's as bad as we were.
Worse. Should see my garden hose.
Yeah, they are useful, those hoses.
At that stage, you knew I had to sort of start edging my way into Michael and sitting in hotel rooms with him to, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning and talking about life, philosophy and whatever else. I always was trying to find a place for him that was outside of rock stardom. I still remember spending a day with him one day going, trying to find all the things he liked, like sailing. Do you like sailing? Sailing. Man, you could be a sailor. And the only thing I come to one day was the motorbikes. I went, right, race motorbikes. He goes, well, I might kill myself. It doesn't matter, you know, because I just want him to find something that he could put his energies into. And that's probably one of his biggest problems, that his energy, his life, you know, his life turned into the soap opera.
After his split with Kylie, Michael never seemed to stay single for long, being linked to a string of beautiful women, all brief flings, until he met the 19-year-old, half Danish, half Peruvian supermodel, Helena Christensen.
Oh, I think she was the first one that gave him a clip around the ears. You know, she had him, you know, she nearly had him at yes sir, no sir stage.
We joined up with Helena and her parents and her grandparents. Michael loved getting the family together. Although, you know, his mother and I divorced, we still all gathered.
I thought that was it. I thought he's got the girl that can stand up to him. He's got a girl that can earn as much money as he can. There's a girl who's got as much sex as he has. She had a great family. You know, she had a lot of style. This is it. Finally done, fait accompli, over, match. What day do I have to be at the wedding and which suit am I going to wear?
He loved family life, really did, but he never had enough of it. That was the trouble.
The problem is Michael had this sort of great, they had a home, it was very good, it was great, there was a sense of control about it. But I think that also forced him in at the same time, you know, he's missing his wild side or something.
Michael and Helena were deeply in love. The pair settled into a blissful existence until 1992, when an altercation with a taxi driver was to change Michael's life forever.
I think that they'd all been out having a good time, Helena and he and the whole gang, and they're probably a little bit, you know.
He was a bit drunk, they were push biking around. He stopped in the middle of this little street to eat some food, and I think it was a cab driver, and he wouldn't move, you know.
This taxi driver got out and socked him and knocked him down, and he hit his head on the curb.
I mean, he got king hit, you know, and just, you know, king hit, you know, that expression, it's just like whacked.
He had a hairline fracture of the skull for quite a long time before it was diagnosed.
It was pretty serious because he lost his taste and smell instincts, and it took a lot of getting over.
In particular, I think that the smell sensation can induce, if you lose that, that can induce really intense depressions and stuff like that.
You know, I can't taste anything. It was, you know, suddenly you sort of saw a slightly sort of miserable side in him, which was like, was very, very incompatible with what he was like as a bloke. So I think in some ways it's very, very underestimated what it did to him.
I think that was the beginning of a few bad moments for Mike. Some people say it was, you know, it was maybe a reason why he did start to get on too many pharmaceuticals. I was not aware of a lot of these things because, you know, sometimes Dad's the last one to find out, but I was terribly worried. He was on loads of Prozac. I never had any idea that he was on so much. If I'd known that, I would have really You know, asked a few questions of the doctors who had prescribed it all, because they're just throwing it at him.
By 1995, Michael had moved to London with the idea of starting work on a long-promised solo album. It was in London that Michael renewed an old acquaintance, a friendship that was to attract more attention than he bargained for.
I think Paula had had her eyes on Michael for some time, and I think she set the trap, and I think he walked right into it. in the nicest way.
It appeared that Paula did go out of her way to sort of secure Michael, and obviously fell deeply in love with him, which I can't blame anyone for ever falling in love with another person. Paul had arrived in New York, this is years before all this happened, to do interviews with Michael, and there was trouble even back then. So I think there was a pretty long-term play and fascination with Michael.
No messages ever got through. I think Paula tried to build a brick wall around him. Why, I don't know. Jealousies or just possessiveness. But even the family had that big problem of getting news to Michael, or even to call home, something like that. I'd ring up and say, "Didn't you get my man?" Huh? That was a regular thing. So unfortunately, it was true.
I just think it was a stage, and whatever they were taking and whatever they were doing and whatever else, and I think that, obviously I know some of the stories behind the scenes of, what was being found and all that sort of business. So I think they both just went on a ride.
I just don't think that's true, that she pulled him into a more destructive cycle. Certainly to begin with, I mean, Paula was teetotal. As far as I know, didn't really do drugs or whatever.
Michael always wanted to have the idea of having a family. Michael was two people. He was, the dirty rock star. At the same time, he's a good, lovely, down-to-earth person, and you can't separate them. They're the same. And Paula had a family, and Michael just saying, "Oh, the kids are so great, and it's so great." We took them shopping the other day, and you could see it in his eyes.
He just loved her kids. I mean, it wasn't just Tiger. It was. Those kids really got along with him very well, and he enjoyed them so much. So I think he had a feeling, a semblance of family. But I think he felt very in tune with, being able to drive the kids to school and pick them up, and that was quite things he hadn't done. This was a new life, and I think he enjoyed it very much.
When we were in this bedroom with all the recording gear and working on the songs, Paula would just kind of flounce in and kind of in a sort of negligee or something and sprawl across the bed, which was kind of always funny. I think actually Bono used that phrase, "She flirts for England," and it sort of naturally turned into a song title.
I think he was extremely happy with Paula. I think he was trapped a bit. I think he took on a bit more than he should have. Not so much about Paula, but the things that associated with Paula.
He was musically adventurous and wanted things to develop and to move on and to find different sound and kind of reinvent themselves a bit musically. He was definitely felt that to an extent it was getting perhaps starting to feel a bit like a creative treadmill, that it wasn't progressing.
I think there was a lot of tension. It was, everyone had evolved to a different degree, and I think they'd grown older. They were living in different parts of the world at the time. It was a contributing factor. Michael's lifestyle. He was a gypsy. He was the eternal gypsy. That was living a life totally separate to everybody else. But it wasn't the case of Michael against the band. There'd be situations where Michael would be unhappy with a certain member, or a certain member was unhappy with Michael, and another person would agree with that member. But other situations would be, another member might be unhappy with another member, and Michael would agree with that person about that, or whatever. It was more that than the band versus Michael, or Michael versus the band.
Maybe he was able to, but I don't think he was looking to make INXS less edgy. He was always trying to find ways of sort of getting things to happen in INXS. There's no question about that. I don't think he'd lost any loyalty particularly to INXS.
What do you argue about?
You know, Andrew and I write songs that completely cross purposes. I want this from a song and he wants that from a song. And then the crosshairs get together and we sometimes come up with an album or a song. You know? And that's what makes it sort of unusual sound. So we argue about that. You know, he's a purist and I'm into change. And so we kind of get a medium somewhere.
He wanted to experiment more, I think, than the rest of the guys. And of course, he eventually did, over a few years, 3 or 4 years, create his solo album.
Well, it's not. I mean, obviously it's not a particularly happy album. I mean, it's very somebody kind of looking inside themselves, somebody looking around and not necessarily saying everything in the garden's rosy. Sometimes I think it kind of sounds like he wishes things could be better, things could somehow return to a happier state.
It didn't go very far, unfortunately, because it went quite well in Australia, but it never got the promotion it needed in the States or the UK, which is a pity, because I think it's some of the best music Michael ever wrote.
It also kind of reflects some of the unhappiness caused by the intrusiveness of the press, and he'd get pretty upset when the papers were kind of being very rude about Paula.
It's really funny, when I was in the beginning with INXS, I had this like vision that I'd be on my farm somewhere reading about Michael in soap magazines. I actually had this vision. That's why I used to teach him about the media. If you use the media, one day they use you.
But the media and shit, sometimes they give people like a hard time because they forget why they're where they're at. They become like a celebrity as opposed to a musician or a singer, and I think that it's kind of what was starting to happen and did happen to Michael.
Hey, head to the verdict, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, he'd say things to me like, you know, I'd be really, really happy if nobody ever wrote another word about me ever again, you know, because this stuff just is destroying, you know. It's and there's a huge kind of weight of it, you know. Every week, every paper, that it would just kind of go on and on.
He had an absolute gutful of the press there. I mean, they'd follow him around. He couldn't get any peace.
I'm trying to move. I can't move.
He even took Tiger out in a pram or a stroller. They'd follow him up the street. It was horrible.
I mean, they take photos of you and they put another photo behind it and actually, you know, lie, you know, with a photo, which is amazing. It's amazing it's legal, but it is.
He went from being a rock star to something he wasn't comfortable with being, and that was an international celebrity. And I don't think he knew how to handle being an international celebrity. I think he just wanted to be what he was, a writer, a singer, a performer, and a party boy when the feeling took him. You know?
He did let criticism have a huge effect on him. He thought that it was unfair, that he was incredibly hated, and I thought it was as well.
I'm not a cartoon, and I'm not just one thing. You know, I'm not one-dimensional. There's other levels to me, and you know, and that's something to offer, I hope. And I, you know, would like to offer that, not just be put in the box. That's all.
I mean, it's no secret. There's a long, ongoing battle between Bob Geldof and Michael. There's the whole issue of where the children could or couldn't go, and I mean, I wouldn't really go into the wrongs and rights of it. But all I can say is that it was he found it very very depressing, and he found it as a kind of intractable problem that he couldn't see through. He couldn't see what the resolution was, and he felt it was weighing him down.
Despite the unwanted harassment of the British tabloid press, Michael flew to Australia to prepare for the forthcoming INXS tour, unsure if Paula and the children would be joining him for Christmas. Seemingly in good spirits, no one could have predicted that these would be the last few days of Michael's life.
Any surprises in store? The early show? Yeah.
When isn't there ever?
The day before, Susie and I, we had dinner with him, and it was all go, go, go. He never stopped talking about Tiger and Paula, and getting them all out here to join him on the tour. And he was, I think, caught up in a lot of things that I think got out of control, particularly with Paula. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of strain in his life at that stage. I think he just got a little lost.
I guess nobody will, well, a couple of people could tell us, and perhaps at some point they will tell us exactly what went on in that room between the hours of midnight and 9 a.m.
We'd dropped Michael off on the Friday night after we'd been to dinner, and he just danced away from the vehicle and waving and happy to Larry. Kim Wilson and her boyfriend were there. They sat up drinking and chatting and hearing all about his exploits and his hopes for the film industry and things.
Clearly, as those hours wore on, Michael was becoming increasingly intoxicated, and it's now very apparent that the cocktail of antidepressants, alcohol, coke in his system was conspiring to make him incredibly depressed. At some point, Kim and her partner left, and suffice to say that there were a number of telephone calls in which the situation in London was discussed in some detail. There were very heated discussions. One story I heard was that Geldof had essentially agreed to allow Michael and Paula to bring the children out for Christmas.
We don't know what was said really, but he was having a row with Bob over the whole issue. But Paula was being a bit vague that night about a few things, I think, and I think that got him down also.
Michael I know a few people like it, they just can't be by themselves. They've got to be with other people. And it's not for any sexual gratification or whatever, but they just need company. Because their own mind will get on top of them or whatever, I'm not sure.
And those last phone messages that he left and the last phone conversations he had with people, some of which have been revealed to date and some of which haven't, do indicate, yes, that he was absolutely depressed and at a point where I think he may well have contemplated suicide and perhaps was way too intoxicated to really make a kind of sane decision about something like that.
Carry on, Hutch.
Rose Bay Police were called to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Double Bay, at 12:30 p.m. this afternoon. The body of an Australian citizen who has been a resident in England for some time was discovered in the hotel on the 5th floor. The body was found just before noon by a member of the hotel staff. The hotel room where the body was found has been secured, and crime scene investigators are completing investigations at this time. Detectives have taken into possession a leather belt for scientific examination. It would appear that there are no suspicious circumstances.
I woke up, funnily enough, that morning feeling terribly uneasy. I don't know why, but I just felt that I wanted to talk to him. And I sat on that lounge over there and I said to Susie, as they use ringing now, it's about 9 o'clock, because if you ring him before he wakes up, well, then we'll cop it, So I kept putting it off, and I said, oh, well, I'll wait till 11 o'clock. But I went into the study and I was doing some work there, and then the phone rang and it was a reporter. He said, would you like to have a comment about Michael? And I said, what do you mean? About the tour? He said, no. He said, oh, I'm sorry, and hung up. And I thought, that's weird, because I really went cold. I thought, something's happened, you know. I thought there'd been an accident or something like that. So I came out from there to here, and by the time I got here, there was a knock on the front door, and it was the police coming to tell us the terrible news, yeah. Terrible occasion.
Chris, Michael's dead. Well, I can't remember exactly, because at that stage you blank out. Michael's been found dead, or Michael's dead, and I was like, I actually don't know if I said much after that. I don't know if I said how. I don't know. I just think I'll call you back. I put the phone down and just walked out of the room, and somebody must have rang Sam back and said, what's Chris just been told? Because I just went out with the Pixies for days and days and days and days and days.
It really shook me on the day. It shook my children who knew him. I mean, he'd stayed at our house here in Elena and things like that. It shook all my friends and all my friends that knew him. It shook everybody.
It only takes a split second to actually decide to kill yourself and do it, you know. And I mean, given another split second, you mightn't do it. I've known people who've tried to kill themselves and tried a lot harder than Michael did and actually survived it. And that's what they said, well, I lost it for that much time. And, you know, who knows what kind of drove him to that. I think his whole life had become kind of, you know, very confusing.
Friends, family, and an array of stars gathered at Sydney's St Andrew's Cathedral. But despite the highly charged emotional atmosphere, the sombre occasion was not without incident.
It was a bizarre day, yeah. Nick Cave sang Into My Arms, and you know, the kind of, there's that awful deja vu when you sang it again at Paula's funeral. But at some point halfway through the song in Sydney, somebody at the back of the church tried to throw themselves off a gallery.
Yeah, some guy up in the mezzanine in St Andrew's Cathedral cried out, Michael, and he tried to jump off the mezzanine floor, but somebody grabbed him, thank goodness, and pulled him back.
It was a completely hot, sunny, cloudless day, and as we walked out with the coffin at the end of the service, the heavens opened, and it was thunderclaps and lightning. It was very, very odd.
As the boys and the band and my son Rhett carried the Mark out, suddenly there was a huge storm. It just lightning and thunder and everything. It was just like Michael was saying, hey, yeah, it was a very moving experience.
I just don't think he killed himself. I really don't. He did in the end, but I think it was accidental. And I knew him so well.
For the first 2 years after he died, I used to just about slam my head against the brick wall, thinking if. And then one day I thought, I don't know what happened. I just thought, I can't if all my life.
I have flayed my skin off from the night, thinking of things I could have done or could have said, or why didn't I do, or why didn't I have said. So I'm not trying to save my feelings.
The record was, you know, 95% finished at the point when he died. The idea was to release it after the INXS stuff had all finished, and to promote it, and you know, to do it live. So that was very much the intention. I think he's very proud of it. Yeah. The last track on the solo record is called Slide Away, which is basically it's a duet with Michael and Bono.
Bono had a lot of time for Mike, and Mike had a lot of time for Bono. I think they chatted about a lot of things. And one thing they chatted about that Bono told me, Kurt Cobain had just died, And he said, I looked at Mike and he looked at me and we both said, well, we'll never do that. Yeah, yeah.
People don't mind if you kill yourself. They're quite happy about that. It's bizarre. There's not many other things like that. So, yeah.
It's like when you work in the newsroom and someone dies, you know, there's almost like, someone died today, we've got a lead story.
Great, lead story, yeah. Yeah, well, I hope I don't become a lead story.
He was somebody who had so much more to do and was such a creative artist. And I think also the feeling of wanting to be able to do more to help, to kind of prevent what happened.
On his birthday last year, his dad got a group of people together and we went out in the harbour and put his ashes in the water.
We scattered his ashes at Rose Bay, a lovely ceremony, just 20 or 22 people, the band, their wives, close friends of Michael's, and all the guys that helped him in his career turned up, and it was a very touching time. Amazing thing happened. The weather suddenly cleared, and this was late afternoon, and suddenly we had a beautiful sunset right behind the city skyline over there. The sun's rays came out, a saffron sunset.
We stopped and the whole harbour went still and everyone on the boat was sailors, and there was a sunset over the city with, you know, rays of light going up into the sky, and these seagulls flew in and just sat around the boat, and it was just the absolute perfect situation. And we thought, yeah, this is what he wanted. He wanted someone to actually have respect for him, rather than care about whether it's a great television event or not. And that was the moment where everyone said goodbye to him, you know. And that was the moment when some of the people who were closest to him actually cried.
Eminence to me is just in the right environment of friends, you know. Feeling that you kind of matter beyond the hype, beyond the music world as well, you know. That you're valid, you exist outside of magazines and things.
Thank you very much. Peace.